Hello and welcome. It's been a while since we've been able to talk to all of you, but this is EUphoria. But the twist is that it's also EUphoria and Worlds. We're, of course, as always, available on YouTube, Spotify, Apple's podcasts, and SoundCloud, really wherever you get your podcasts. I'm Drakos, joined by Frosk. We're going to be together for the entirety of Worlds. Us on the desk, you sitting at home. We'll be calling in a lot of guests, hoping to get as many people as we can from China, but we're going to have to see how that one's going to work out, as well as some guests here in Europe. So we will be here for the entire World Championship. To look at all of the dates, you can check out at LEC on Twitter. I believe there's going to be a handy-dandy graphic post there that'll tell you exactly when these podcasts are going to be coming out, because as much as we would love to be like every Wednesday or every Thursday, Worlds format does not really allow that, at least until the bracket stage. So we'll keep you guys updated. That said, we are coming off of the final two best of fives for play-ins. We've now eliminated 6 teams from Worlds. We've qualified 4 to the group stage. Frosco, it's been a slog. We've been doing Worlds After Dark on the side as well. But how do you feel at this moment about Worlds 2020?
There was not EUphoria for play-ins.
There was not EUphoria for play-ins. And we're going to talk a lot about that today, guys, because there's a body on the table right now, if you're not in YouTube land, not a literal body, figurative body, and we're going to have to bury it proper. But let's start with the good. Come on, EU fans need a win today.
Unicorns of Love. Look, the goods. Okay, so the goods of play-ins is that I think this was the most competitive play-ins that we've ever had. The games were all very exciting, and I think there's probably going to be a couple different factors that go into this one. So I'm actually really looking forward to, as time moves on, when we actually get to look back kind of through the lens of the finished product of Worlds at what happened in play-ins and kind of have more perspective onto it. But in short, it feels like the gap is closing. You're having individual players from emerging regions be competitive or just straight up outclass players from major regions. The macro and fundamentals of League of Legends feel a lot cleaner. There's some really cool things happening with the draft. I don't mind the World's meta. It's not my favorite meta of League of Legends ever, but I do feel like for once it almost feels very balanced in a sense. There's not one champion that just kind of stands above everything. There's no Darius or Mordekaiser running around ruining all of these draft phases. So I think that's a strong good for plans. It was one of the best plans I think I've ever watched.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that for the first time ever, the big thing for me was when we watched play-ins in the past, there always felt like there was this static hierarchy of play-ins teams where you've got CB Law in recent years, at least, has been near the bottom alongside the LJL, and a lot of that similar stuff played out. But when we saw the games, when teams won, it wasn't just from crazy picks, although we did get some of that from UOL. It was, as you said, individual players stepping up. It was better macro game, and it felt not like we were watching this kind of
yeehaw
backroom brawl, rodeo fiesta action, but we were watching good League of Legends, and that's cool to me, because now it finally feels like the play-ins is delivering on what at least you think the vision for play-ins would be, which is actually a play-in stage, not this courtesy victory lap for the teams that are winning in smaller regions.
Have you ever been to a circus?
Yeah, but not in a long time. I'm really curious to where this one's going to go.
So just think of what you think a circus would be like if you've never been to one. Usually how they go is before you get to the acrobats doing all the cool flips in the air and the big animals like the tigers and the lions coming out and all the professionals. Usually you open the circus with a bunch of clowns just kind of, where this is going around in a circle. And now I feel like in the past we had some pretty circus openings,
yes.
You know what I mean? Very traditional. But now we're that Cirque du Soleil shit. It's nice. People come out. It's it's choreographed. The costumes are looking beautiful.
You're the human body can do that. How are they flying through the air like that? That's cool.
And from minute one, it was entertaining.
It absolutely was, which is great. And obviously as an EU fan, there's stuff to be sad about too. But I think the good also overall was I was impressed by a lot of individual regions specifically this time around. Now we talked about the LJL and the CB Law, and they obviously did fall short. And that's kind of, if we're doing the good, the bad, and the ugly of play-ins, definitely CB Law and the LJL are on the bad side.
Can we also put LGD there?
LGD are Screw it, let's start with the bad. We're in a negative mood, we'll start with the bad. It's going to be the bad, the good, and the ugly. The movie title is not important here. Ignore that. Copyright infringement anyway, probably. The bad.
Okay, the bad.
The Elise picks coming out from V3 is the biggest example of throwing in draft I have ever seen in my life, because there is room for interpretation for so many champions. There are so many times where I will go and I will say, listen, guys, I want to talk to the team. I want to talk to the coach before I say,
I want to see what happened.
Yeah, I want to understand what their logic was. But Elise is ass. You know it if you've ever played her. If you played her in peak Elise days when she was OP, like in Season 3, and you could play her in literally any role, and you now have to play her in 2020, you know how I feel right now, because it is horrible. And I do not know why any player or coach in their right mind would go, yes, Elise, that is the champion you can do. That is the champion you can play. And nonetheless, Elise Renekton, because you know what exists? Nidalee Renekton, which is just like Elise Renekton, but in, 2020 instead of 2014, maybe 2015. So yeah, that's my first bad. Now it's very minor, because obviously most of you have probably forgotten that V3 even played in this tournament at this point, but it stuck with me because I hate that champion.
You're still mad about it, I can tell.
I'm still so pissed.
There was a lot of hinting. For those who didn't watch play-ins and just kind of figured like, oh, you were just tuning into Worlds for the main stage, the group stage, and you look around, you're like, I think I'm missing a team here. I can't seem to find the Mad Lions. Mad Lions didn't survive. CB LOL and LJL didn't survive. Rainbow Seven somehow got through to a best of 5, and then LGD came back to life. And Mad Lions let down an entire region. But now we have Unicorns of Love, PSG, TL, and what's their faces?
What's their faces? UOL, LGD, Team Liquid, PSG Town. Yeah, that's good. Those are the 4 teams we sent through. Supermassive falling flat today. Obviously, we just did 2 double back-to-back best of 5 days. If you haven't watched the Mad Lions series, don't. I think watch interviews. We're going to have an interview coming up shortly with Mac to kind of get his insight on the loss. But unless you want to be upset, unless that's your thing, then do not watch that series. There's a lot of great series to watch. The UOL Supermassive series was super hype today. The LGD Legacy one, not as hype, I think, both because we love the Aussies dearly. So watching that one go down the way it did was a little bit sad. But the other positive, we said that's the bad, right? The bad is the Mad Lions. Or the Mad Lions aren't the ugly, though. They're just the bad.
I don't know. Mad
ugly.
Lions, they're right on the line. LGD were definitely the ugly.
LGD were definitely ugly. We'll round out with good. It's the bad, the ugly, and the good.
No, the good is that play-ins were competitive. We have to have a conversation, though, about Mad Lions, actually. So moving away from game state, because we've done a lot of game state analysis about those things over various different channels, whether it's Twitter, whether it's personal streams, whether it's on broadcast.
Yeah.
And so for this podcast and this discussion, because I see it happening a lot, and I really liked what you said, after the best of 5 series, which was, take the L. Our 4th seed did not perform.
Yep. And
ultimately, Mad Lions, previously Splice, although they're a brand new organization, in their first year had back-to-back playoffs. Mm-hmm. They took down G2 in a best of 5. They qualified for Worlds, and they only have one returning veteran player, if you will. I'm using quotations if you're not in YouTube land, in Humanoid.
Yep.
And unless they won Worlds, there was no happy ending. You know what I mean? It was always going to fall short. And so from that perspective, Mad Lions have accomplished a lot. And it's unfortunate that the taste that will be left over in fans' mouths will be one of such disdain and disgust because of the performance on a world stage when everything surrounding it, was obviously very volatile. The fact that Mad Lions really came into fruition during the online stage of the LEC and then moving on to stage, moving into a different meta. And, that's not to take away from the analytical errors of the individual underperformers of Arome and Shadow in particular. Kaiser and Karzi also having some missteps here and there, but mostly consistent, and Humanoid was probably playing in peak Humanoid form.
Yep.
The fact that the coaching and drafting staff really let the team down, I think also went onto social media and were pretty explicit about that in interviews. So I don't think there's any subjective debating there. But I don't know. I think people calling for Arome and Shadow specifically to be replaced is misplaced, because if I'm building a team, just straight thing, if I own Mad Lions or whatever, and I have accomplished X, Y, and Z for my first year as an organization, I'm fiddlesticks, yeah, let's run it back. let's give these players more time. Now, obviously, if this happens again, and this is the other thing, the expectation, the bar has now been set so high for an organization. We go into 2021 LEC, and the first thing's going to be bad drop at Worlds. They crashed out, but there's so much potential with this team, and we've seen it, and now we want to see them rise back up. And then now, unfortunately, if they continue to just tank and go on an Origin downward trajectory, then that's when you got to have the hard conversations and start pulling up the pink slips and looking at the fine print of the contract. But I think to be replace Arome, replace Shadow, F this guy, F that. I'm no. If you're running that team, you're I feel pretty good right now.
I feel like you got I feel like it's probably an unfair phase because these are people, not products, but you got your money's worth, right? At the end of the day, they took you where you needed to go. And obviously if you want to make changes to make your team stronger, that's great, but it shouldn't just be because of this World's performance. Because at the end of the day, yes, they fell flat. But as you said, they had so many achievements prior, and this is still a really strong team. And the thing that does suck, and this sucks for teams at Worlds, and I'm also kind of guilty of this, of holding them accountable for their Worlds performance when we come into the next year and not looking as much at their domestic performance. I always have to check my bias and take a step back. Because when we came into the start of this year, I was G2 0-3 in finals, and I was so sad. But then I had to remind myself, G2 are still the kings of Europe, right? They're still going to come in, they're still going to perform, they're still going to be a great team. Even if, as an EU fan at that moment, coming into the season, talking about this team, my first instinct is, yeah, but they just got the shit kicked out of them. Right? You have to remind yourself, we're back in domestic competitions, back to being about who is going to be the best in Europe. And when we talk about that, Mad Lions are still going to be a contender. And you can be mad and you can be upset about mad. Wow, Jesus. You can be upset about it, but at the end of the day, all you can really hope for is that Mad make the best decisions for them, which, let's be honest, most of us on the outside aren't going to know what the best decisions are for them. It's really easy to just point fingers and assume blame, right? And yeah, you probably can get individually stronger players, but it's, as we've all learned from watching years and years of League of Legends, it's not as simple as plugging playing. Yeah, the guy's a better laner, great. He might also be toxic. He might not also get along with this guy. He might not, there's so many factors, and I don't know. I get the desire to play roster manager via, social media or whatever. I feel it. I feel it when
you're pulling up KDAs, you're checking the math. You're because
we do it a little bit behind the scenes too, right? Where we're oh, I really don't know about this player. I think that maybe they could go for a swap here. But I think it's also important to check yourself and remind yourself that without that inside information, without being a part of the team, you never know. And also just remember that these people are young, that they are rookies, that they are growing into their roles, and that making it as far as they did in their first year is truly impressive. And you can, obviously you can always bring up a team like Misfits as a counterexample, but even Misfits had some more, I feel more veteran, more experienced players in a lot of regards, more calm, cool-headed players. Whereas the thing you love about this team is how creative and how crazy they are. And yeah, but they're also a team that wears their heart on their sleeve a lot more. And that's the double-edged sword of the Mad Lions, I feel like.
I hope that the Mad Lions stay together. I mean, obviously off-season can always be pretty crazy, but I would love to see the Mad Lions stick it out together. I would love to see them have a run back and then kind of make a more educated opinion on the other side of that one, rather than, slamming on the brakes after a Worlds performance and driving away what was a really incredible team for majority of summer.
Yeah. I would be ashamed to see any kind of big changes. Of course, we're going to hear more from Mac in just a little bit. Quickshot had the chance to sit down and talk with him. I'm really excited to actually see. We haven't seen that interview yet, so I really actually am really curious to see what he had to say, how he felt about it, how they reflect about it as a team, because obviously all of us are going to have opinions from the outside, but getting the inside perspective is always going to be more valuable. But that said, I do want to celebrate a couple of things on the side of the good. Actually, real quick, LGD. Back to shitting on things and then back to the good. Well, I want to talk about LGD because LGD, we talked about this before on other platforms, but I want to hit it again here. Chinese teams are so annoying to watch. And you've talked about it, and it's they play so many games every year. They're chilling until they can do this thing where they just chill until the games really matter, right? In the past, people memed it as sandbagging. But LGD is a great example of this, where they did literally nothing during groups, looked like the biggest hot mess of all time, and then double 3-0'd their way into the group stage. And that's infuriating to watch, because what do you say about LGD? I will never predict in favor of LGD ever, and yet they're probably going to do fine.
Yeah, because it's probably true, and this is why for the longest time LPL teams have been so inconsistent. Probably volatile is a better word for that.
Volatile is better, yeah.
Very volatile. They play so many games, and at the end of the day, it's kind of it's like what you said about Mad Lions, they're people.
Yep.
And when you play that many games, how a scrim. I think Mark in an interview with Ashley was talking about like, oh, scrims went really well, so we knew that we were gonna do really well in a best of 5, and then suddenly they like turn it on. And in the LPL, it's like pretty common that your top tier teams don't like smash through a season like you would see in LEC or LCS or even in the LCK to a lesser extent. Although now I don't think that's like always as true as it once was when like SKT was having perfect splits. It's usually you play 20 million games and you kind of coast a little bit. Things like, Uzi would take the first half of the LPL split off after Chinese New Year, and then he'd rejoin the team. And then you get into playoffs and you find that 6th gear and you just start running people over. And so the conversation was always the same from as far back as I can remember, all the way in like 2014, 2015 of like the new upcoming young team. Yes, we're super excited. And then you rock into playoffs and it's the RNGs, the EDGs, the IGs that like run back up. And there is something to be said that, now you have completely new orgs, the JDGs, the Sunings, the TES, and now LGD returning to the international stage, and it is full of, young, new players, but it's always the same thing of you kind of sit, you kind of coast, then when it comes on, you come alive, you turn it on, and you have to find that clutch performance. And that's also what held back TES and JDG for so long before they have now finally climbed to the top. It was supposed to be JDG at MSI. Now it's, of course, TES that hold the first seed for LPL. But they've been there for a while and just been, pushed down by the more veteran, the more experienced players. And now they had to acquire their own veterans or acquire that experience. Yigao and Zoom have now been in the LPL. They were kind of like the third era wave of mid laners that have had the time. TES, Knight picks up, super experienced players like Karsa. They grab Jackie Love and suddenly that team comes alive. So it's still a lot of that experience and that veteranship that is propelling these players forward. I think you can also see that in like TL's performance comparatively to everyone else around them. They were so disciplined, they were so ready, they were so calm, and LGD kind of have that same level of experience, and of course didn't have the same group stage performance, but at least for their best of series were really great when you're reminded that this is a world's finalist, this is a world's semifinalist, this is a world's quarterfinalist on that team.
Yeah, and I think the cool kind of things that you can take away from this, kind of like, I don't want to say like hypotheses, I guess you can take away from it, because I don't think they're complete conclusions, hypotheses, is that like, one, the value of playing on a stage, and two, the value of playing on a big stage. Because if Mad Lions got to play games on a bigger stage, I think they would have fared so much better in this tournament because they earned big stage appearances, but because of the COVID, because of the pandemic, they didn't get a chance to play those games. And I don't know if the stage affected them, but like that's obviously important. Like playing more games on stage feels like a big factor to me. The other thing that we get to see confirmed by TL is that they obviously have a rookie too, and that's tactical, and that's further valuing the importance of veterans on a world stage, further improving, showing us how important it is to have players who have this kind of experience, who aren't going to be shaken by the pressure coming onto them. And I can't say 100%. Maybe Core JJ is micromanaging this guy for 100% of the time. But regardless, the fact that TL has a guy that could do that is such a huge boon for tactical as someone who came onto the world stage and, flashed aggressively. And that's like the first thing. Like the second an 80 carry that's a rookie of the world stage flashes aggressively, I'm like, this guy's here. He's comfortable. He is playing on world stage. He's not sitting there. He's not scared on the world stage. He's playing on world stage. He's willing to take risks. And that is something that we don't always see, especially from Mad Lions as a team that obviously did take some risks, did have their moments, but mostly looked like kind of a shell of the team that we got to see when they were at their peak domestically.
Yeah, and I don't want to like pull all punches. Like we've kind of had two different conversations about what we think happened with Mad Lions and trying to give context and perspective. But I do also think that it is fair to criticize being the key word here, the team, not like flame them and destroy them, but to criticize the team.
Yeah.
The drafts were a mess. The individual performers were a mess. It was very disappointing. And I think that is all fair.
Yeah, I think overall, the wrap-up, it was a really exciting plans. There were some big standouts. EU fans, if you're sad because of Mad Lions, that's totally fine. Congrats to Team Liquid from NA. They look good. They look consistent. That's a big strength going into the group stage.
TL's individual performers looked great. Impact and Jensen in particular are playing on top mechanical form, constantly winning their lane matchups, constantly just dumpstering 1v1 on opponents. Broxa's the big beneficiary of that. He still is playing more so to the fact that his laners are just hard stomping and then like picking up kills. So I'm I'm really curious, what happens when they don't get to smash individual lanes as much. But super disciplined, very patient. The Rift Herald setups are great. They don't actually swap for Herald and pull their bot lane. Instead, they create avenues with the fact that they're winning in top and mid to hold their opponent. And Broxy usually gets to 1v1 the Herald, pulling core JJ up, not to show on Herald, but just in case something goes bad. So that way you're not losing CS or losing farm on your bot lane or losing time by pulling them away from the lane. They brought out the Twitch and the Rakan off base resets when it comes to everyone resets their back and base. Where do we attack next on the map? They're super disciplined and super fast with their setup. And I think it's that consistency that made them so dominant in play-ins. They looked how major regions teams should look versus emerging regions teams.
Yeah, I agree completely. I'm ready to see what TL can do. Of course, during the time of recording this, the group draw just finished, so we're going to talk about the group draw when we return. But for now, we're going to step away for a second. We're going to let Quickshot take over. He sat down with Mac, and we're going to have to hear what Mac had to say about all things relating to Mad Lions and Europe at Worlds.
Thank you so much, Drakos and Frosk. It is a quick chat with Quickshot, as I am joined by Mac from the Mad Lions. First of all, thank you so much for joining me. It's been a difficult week for yourself and for the team. So let's start by talking about Worlds. Let's start about the fact that Mad Lions have been eliminated. And what's your gut reaction? How are you and the team handling the ultimate defeat?
I mean, we're all really, really incredibly disappointed, obviously. We had really high expectations of ourselves coming into kind of playoffs towards the end of this year, and it kind of went downhill a bit from there. And I think those expectations make it even harder now. I'll be really frank with you. I don't think any of us have really slept much at all last night, so that doesn't help either. At the moment, we're all spending a lot of time together, which is nice, but I think that's also because none of us really want to be alone with our thoughts at the moment, because that's when it's really hard. So yeah, it's been pretty difficult, honestly. On the plus side, we've had a really huge amount of support from fans. Like the kind of positive messages that we've got have massively outweighed any negativity, which I'm really thankful for.
That makes me exceptionally happy to hear. And thank you for the very earnest and frank answer. It is a difficult situation, and it's a challenging one because, like you said, the expectations were set so high. Mad Lions, let's be honest as well, have been struggling a little bit. It feels like week 7, week 8 of summer and coming into Worlds. But I personally had really, really high hopes because I'd seen the ceiling that yourself and your team had been able to play. How would you address some of the public sentiment around, players underperforming, the picks and bans? Fans were not particularly supportive or understanding of the Sen and Wukong, for example. So can you talk to me a little bit about, those final games and some of the messages that you've been seeing?
Sure. I will say that all of the negative messages I've gotten have been about draft.
As they would be for yourself, right?
Yeah. But I fully take responsibility for that. I think for a lot of the series, the drafts were okay. They weren't that bad, although I think we missed the mark with a couple of them. But for Game 5, it was really a disaster. But at that point, I felt like we were a bit out of options. So it got really hard. In terms of criticism of our own performance, definitely deserved in terms of the way that we're actually playing. And also the way that we're drafting. I don't want to use this as an excuse in any way, but what I will say is that we have 4 players and 2 coaches who are rookies. Obviously, I've been around for a while, and Peter has obviously been around for a while, but on stage, we have me and we have Cass. And both of us in total have about 14 games of on-stage experience drafting. Because that's how many we got in spring regular season.
We said that on broadcast several times, Mac, and outside of Arome's 1 extra game as he subbed in last year, 15 games for him, 14 for 3 of the players, and then Humanoid obviously significantly more. Did the weight of the stage, the weight of Worlds, the weight of traveling, quarantine, did it play a significant role, especially from your perspective, in balancing and preparing these young players in not only a new environment in an international event, but a new environment just playing on a stage?
Yeah, I mean, playing on a stage was really big. It was really big. We can talk about it a bit more later, I suppose. But actually, we had really good expectations coming into the tournament because our scrim results were actually fantastic coming in, and I felt like we improved a lot. I spoke to Law the other day on broadcast, I think, about how great it's been scrimming all of the good Asian teams and how much we've learned from them and how it's helped us grow and adapt a lot. But we literally weren't able to showcase any of it on stage. And that's part of that is adapting to stage, and part of that is also, I think, dealing with the stress. I mean, when we're in Berlin, we as a staff and as an org have a really good handle on managing stress and managing burnout, managing expectations, all of these things. And suddenly, when you're doing worlds in a hotel in China in quarantine, a lot of the time, like, you have so much less control over the environment and over everything else that's going on, plus all the added pressure and the added stress and the travel. We also had some pretty unlucky circumstances. Our performance manager, Jake the Viking, got a tooth infection like 2 days before we were supposed to fly.
Oh my word.
So he wasn't able to come to China, and we rely on him for a lot of things. Peter, we actually don't even know how this happened, but he got a severe muscle strain and wasn't able to walk for the best part of a week, so he couldn't come to the studio with us. So it was kind of a perfect storm in a lot of ways. The players also definitely struggled with the quarantine, as did I. They're very young. You know, most of our players are 19, 20. Arome is the oldest at 22.
Yeah.
And being isolated for them was really hard. We're a very close team most of the time, and our players are very kind of sensitive and often very emotional, and they rely on each other a lot for support, and they lean on each other a lot for support.
We felt that. I mean, we can see it in terms of how the
and,
players interact and how the win celebrations go. And I want to be very honest, Mac. I truly appreciate pretty much any interview that you've ever had with our broadcast. I think you're very eloquent and very fair. And I just want to call out that explaining and talking about new players and rookies, to a lot of our fans and viewers, they sometimes say it's an excuse, and frankly, that pisses me off. It's context, it's information, right? And what I appreciate is 5 minutes ago, you said that the criticism of individual performances was fair. And if I may project for a second, learning how to manage those players, learning how to adapt, figuring out what resources you have to take with you on the road, it is the first time for many of you guys, and Mac, you yourself have said in European interviews, hey, it's my first year as like a head coach. So I just appreciate recognizing it, and I appreciate you sort of owning that, especially on the draft front. But now let's zoom out a little bit and talk about the year, because it is the first year for many of these players, you know, full season, full competitive year, making it to Worlds Play-ins. You yourself have been very, very humble in the success that you and the players have been able to find. How do you ultimately reflect on 2020 as the Mad Lions?
I mean, sometimes I like to say to the players, and I often say this to anyone who's not doing badly, I like to say that your year ends in heartbreak no matter where it ends, unless you literally win World Finals, which Europe hasn't for a long time. Well,
that is a very morbid outlook. I think I know where you're going with it, but I think it's a very big reality check. But please continue.
It is. But I mean, so it gets better. Don't worry. No matter where it ends, it always ends in heartbreak. You know, it has to stop somewhere. But that doesn't mean that it wasn't amazing while it was going, and that you don't have all of these wonderful memories, and that you haven't been on this incredible journey, and that you haven't grown together. And that's the big takeaway from this year for us. This year has been absolutely amazing. I wish it could have carried on a bit longer, but that doesn't mean that I'm any less grateful for everything that we've done together as a team and everything that we've experienced together as a team.
It's beautiful, and I just love listening to how you represent your thoughts, how much you can glean as a viewer, as an outside party, to how your management style and your leadership is behind the curtains, right? It's very uplifting, holistic. You didn't go straight to the successes of spring and summer. You went to team health, camaraderie, emotional checks. But how does it feel when you look back and you go, for this roster, for these players that really expectations didn't exist, to be the first team to take down G2 in a BO5, to go third and fourth, how proud of those accomplishments are you?
Incredibly proud, incredibly proud. I remember sitting back in my chair after the G2 victory and just kind of sitting down in the office and being like, did this just happen? Did we just make history? And that's a moment that I'll never forget. Absolutely. So yeah, I think regardless of how even the world's experience, I'm really grateful for. Regardless of how it ended, there are only so many times that you get to be on a stage in a game 5 where everything is on the line with 1 million people or however many were people watching our game, watching. There's only so many times in your life that you get to do that. And the fact that we get that opportunity is something that not a lot of players and coaches do get to have.
Let alone in their rookie year.
I worked with Chachi last year, who had worked for 5 years trying to get there, and thank God he finally did. But a lot of players don't. And the fact that we've been able to get that in our first year together and get that experience is worth so much.
I have one last question looking back in 2020 before we move on to Worlds at large. I want you to tell me personally, how do you feel about all the successes you found? At the beginning of the year, in a couple of interviews and seeing you on stage, I believe you were giga scared and nervous, taking ownership of a team, leading. I think you respected the role and the expectations that the organization and the players had of you. And I was nervous. I thought, oh, this dude's so afraid. He's going to put his tail between his legs and run away like a little puppy. But you didn't. You proved me wrong. You rose to the challenge. You delivered successful results. So as a coach and, being in the limelight as you have been, how do you reflect on your personal year? Yeah, you don't get asked this one a lot, do you? It's always about the players.
Normally I just deflect and talk about
how great
I'm
aware. I'm aware. I'm putting you on the spot, my man.
Yeah, it's been really amazing. It's been really amazing. I think I was definitely very, very worried coming into the beginning of the year. I think I have a lot of really great people around me to look up to. Over the last 3 years, I've had the chance to make friends with Duke, with Peter, with Grabs, all of these people who I think are amazing, amazing coaches who are just brilliant geniuses at what they do. And I was really intimidated coming up into that because I wasn't sure of how I was going to match up. I think I still have a lot of learning to do, but I think the thing that I'm most happy with is that I've been able to do things my way. We've
your
done
way
things
works.
really differently.
Your way works,
Mad
my
Lions.
friend.
It worked definitely for our players. I think in a lot of cases there are players that wouldn't necessarily flourish in different environments that we at Mad Lions can make work and make grow because of the environment that we have and because of the way that we like to do things as a staff. And a lot of that is, not just me, it's inherited from Peter because he and I have basically the identical philosophy when it comes to coaching. But yeah, so I'm really happy that we've been able to do things differently. We do a lot of extra stuff as a team. We scrim less than other teams. We put a lot more emphasis on mental health and physical health and all these types of things. And that stuff is really dear to me. So I think being able to prove that approach can work and that it's not just about, scrimming 9
12
games
hours
a day or something insane.
Exactly.
And yeah, I'm really happy that that's been able to work because I think that if the kind of industry is going to be able to grow as a profession, that's something that needs to be addressed because it's really unhealthy. And for me personally, it was a huge source of worry coming in for my own health, mentally and physically, whether or not I was going to be able to cope with that.
Makes a lot of sense. And I think you've definitely laid the foundations for a very strong future. The first year, as Mad Lions head coach, the success they found, congratulations. Humble in victory, gracious in defeat. It really is a pleasure. We've only got a few minutes left. So I do want to ask just one or two last quick questions, if I may. You've obviously played a lot more games off stage than you did on stage. And when we look at the World Championships and one of the first teams that's been eliminated, let's focus in on what are your expectations for G2, Fnatic, and Rogue's chances going forward? Because frankly, you're the most informed person in Europe right now who can help give us some expectations.
So I can't speak too much to their own experiences. I think ours, I already commented a couple of times that we felt like the Asian teams are really, really strong in a lot of ways that we hadn't anticipated and hadn't realized. And that a lot of the time, I kind of hinted at this the other day, they punish you so hard for mistakes that we're not used to being punished for. Things like level 1 lane positioning, planning, wave state. I think one of the things that the Asian teams do really well that we learned from them, like we went and scrimmed, I think we scrimmed Damwon when we first arrived in quarantine, and we got 6-0'd. We just got destroyed. Every game was over in 10 minutes. And for the next 2 weeks, we basically spent a long time drilling, trying to practice what they did to us in the early game, because we hadn't seen a team do that to us in Europe with regards to how well they managed their waves around the position of the jungler. It just felt like their waves were always magically in the right spots when our jungler was on the opposite side of the map for us to get punished. So I think actually the Asian teams are way stronger than we may have anticipated. So I'm not going to lie, I'm a little bit worried.
Scary,
I think normally...
You're beating around the bush,
I mean,
but basically you're summarizing it. We're nervous.
Well, though, right?
Oh.
I'm a bit nervous. But I mean, I don't think Mad Lions is anything to read into, because I think we collapsed pretty hard. I don't think that G2 and Fnatic are going to collapse like that. But we had a similar experience last year. It's also worth saying. Like on Splice, we also kind of got smashed in every scrim. And then European teams all did super well. So it's always so hard to predict from
How
scrims.
on earth, Mac, you always find a way to make something uplifting. It is truly a talent. I have run out of time with you. Mac, thank you so much for taking the time to join me. This will obviously make it to EUphoria, and safe travels home. I cannot wait to see what you do with the rest of the off-season and moving into 2021. It has been a pleasure. Congratulations on 2020.
Thank you very much.
Wow, hey, that was a lot happened in the interview. There was a big range of emotions, from like empathy to fear. Regardless, thank you to Quickshot for making that happen while we were otherwise occupied today. That one happened while the final series was going on, and unfortunately, the Mac couldn't be there to play it. But ultimately, some really, really excellent insight. And so before we talk about kind of the back half of the interview, where we talk about the rest of the European teams and the rest of our hopes at Worlds, and also the group draw that we've now seen. Some final notes on Mad. I love what Mac was saying. I almost cried a little bit when he made his speech about how, like, in the end it's always gonna end in heartbreak. Unless you win Worlds, you're never gonna be. And that's very poetic, and two, super sad. And I guess that's just the reality of being competitive, is that unless you're number one, you're not, and that's just it. And maybe you can pat yourself on the back for everything else, but if you're a player who's truly hungry to be the best, everything else is kind of gonna bring you down, and that's sad.
I think we had Mac on for our first episode of this
season,
of this season's EUphoria, and we asked him about his coaching philosophy, and I believe he gave us the quote: "The motto of the team is be willing to do what no one else will to rise." And I think the overall sentiment of team health and player health, and just basically unlocking these very young adults to reach their full potential. And the fact that Mad Lions, like, people say it all the time, oh, our goal is to win Worlds, our goal is to win the LEC, our goal is to, and you're just like, it's all just lip service, because they'll say it every single time.
Well, it's also just meaningless, because it's literally everyone's goal.
Yeah, but it actually feels like Mad Lions' goal.
I think you're right. And I think that the thing that was cool when we talked to Mac at the start of the year was you talked about the priority on mental health, and that he said that one of the big things that he wanted for the team is that he wanted each of his players to leave not as better players, but as better people. And obviously, like, this whole fly to China, be in quarantine for 14 days, get your ass kicked out of Worlds is probably not the personal growth opportunity that is going to define these guys. But it is. But I'm glad. It feels like this final speech that we got from him was consistent with the philosophy that he stated with us at the start of the year. And that's cool to see, because a lot of times when people, like, everyone comes in with a plan. You or me want to coach, we're going to come in with a plan. And I'm going to tell you on paper it's going to be great because we're shoutcasters and we talk real good. Is that plan going to be great in 6 weeks when we're 0-10 or we get our asses kicked in plans? No. We're probably going to have a very hard time sticking to that plan. We're going to start throwing shit at the wall and seeing what sticks. So the fact that even in spite of all of this stuff going down, the fact that Mac is able to keep a cool head and continue with his philosophy moving forward, it is cool. And it sucks to hear a lot of our suspicions confirmed. That, like, I didn't know that the guy with the beard, Jake. Yeah, the back rub / like exercise guy. I don't know. He does a lot of stuff for that team. He's
making snacks. He's doing exercise. He's got team
There's
games.
massages. There's like Jake. Shout out to Jake. You're the real MVP. I'm so sorry you couldn't be there. And that sucks for the team because, like, yeah, I wouldn't be able to handle quarantine now. And I am, like, almost 10 years older than most of these players. And the mental strain on me being alone by myself for 14 days would be so hard. So I can't even imagine how difficult it was.
It's actually what Perk said in our final episode of EUphoria. Because we were talking to him, he's like, I have a quarantine plan. And I think this wasn't the exact quote, but it was the sentiment of the younger teams, like, not being certain about what the younger teams or the younger players would do, and that since he was a more experienced player, that he felt better prepared for going into quarantine and recognizing how much it would suck.
Yeah, and that's got to build hope for us. Of course, like, I think let's talk more about the other teams before we do. A final shout out to Mad Lions. It was a fantastic year. We're sorry to see you go. Not just because it lessens our chances at winning Worlds or embarrassing NA or anything like that, because it just sucks. It always sucks to see a team fall out in the fashion that they did. But ultimately, still a good year for Mad. We're not going to talk about them more on this podcast outside of when we need to bring up their games versus teams that are still around. But overall, a year that you can be proud of. EU fans, if you are disappointed, fair. If you want to leverage that criticism, fair. But let's keep it wholesome. Mac talked about the positives outweighing the negative. Why don't we double down on that? To send more positives their way, send more love, because this team does deserve it. And ultimately, even if you think like Arome bombed out or Shadow bombed out, they don't deserve to be miserable as people. Even if you don't think they're good players, they don't deserve to be miserable as people. So send them some love, show them some support in this time. Because that sucks. That does suck. And the thing that scares me, Froskern, is not the negative sentiment building around the Mad Lions. That's their problem now. They're going to handle it, and I hope the players are doing well. The thing that scares me is when Max says we went in day one, and we scrimmed day one gaming, and they beat us in ways that we had never been beaten before, doing things that we had never seen or experienced before. Because this is a team that has been scrimming our best teams. And so them coming to Worlds and seeing shit that they've never seen before has me scared for Fnatic, for Rogue, and for G2.
It's always the same, though, Drakos. Like, in the past, you talk to pro players, usually European players, and they're like, we played one side of the matchup, and then we got smashed. And so we played the other side of the matchup, and then we also got smashed, and I don't know what's real anymore. Like, this is not a new problem. And that's not to try to take away and say that, yeah, Europe's still fine, or you don't have to be scared. Like, again, my tournament favorites are Damwon and JDG. But just like Mac said, you know, it's so hard to predict. They got smashed in scrims last year. All the European teams made it out of groups. This time around, they're doing really well at scrims, and they bomb in play-ins. Level 1s have always been a problem. That's how FPX absolutely smacked G2 in the final. They rocked into that 0-3 final, and FPX, I think, if I'm remembering correctly, like split map on them every single time, or had level 1 setups every single time, and they just got rocked. So I hope that our more experienced teams in G2 and Fnatic have learned from their mistakes. But
it sounds like it's exactly as bad as I feared it was, but that's just par for the course, Froskern, which is definitely not what I want to be hearing. God damn. Okay, so I think we just have to jump right into groups, because ultimately, like, none of this speculation matters without the context of who these teams are going to be playing. So for context, if you haven't seen the group draw yet, you've been living under a rock, but it's cool that you waited till you were here to listen to it. So I'm going to run through it one more time. Each group as well as the team that was drawn into them. So Group A, G2 Esports, Machi Esports, Suning, and Team Liquid now coming in from the play-ins. Group B, this is the group of death people. Brace yourselves. Damwon Gaming, JDG, or JD Gaming, I guess, technically, PSG Talon, and Rogue. Now, PSG Talon, not a big threat, but those other two are damn scary. Group C, potentially another meat grinder. Hopefully Fnatic make it up. We're going to have to see, because it is Fnatic, it is Gen G, it is LGD, and it is Team Solo Mid.
It's TSM. We got an email about this, Drakos.
It says... It's actually true. It is TSM. They're
It's
not Team Solo.
TSM.
It is TSM.
It
They're
is
not Team
TSM.
Solo Mid anymore. They are just TSM. My bad. I was reading it off of Gamepedia. Whoops.
Gamepedia just
Sorry,
trolling.
Reggie. Just TSM. Just TSM.
And then it's DRX, FlyQuest, Top Esports, and Unicorns of Love. So
And
I'm
Group D.
I'm
yeah.
gonna. How do you want to? Do you want me to just like blitz through this, or
Why don't we
how do
go?
I attack
Okay.
this?
So I think. All right. Let's do. Why don't we do the EU fan bias first? Because
Okay.
that's what people want to hear. That's what people want to hear. We're going to break down each group individually after this. But first up, I need to know from you, Froskarin, where are we getting out of groups? Where are the safe bets? Where are the maybe we'll see what happens? And where are the we're giga doomed? So you got to give it to me. G2 Esports, are they the safe bet? Are they the or are they we're giga doomed?
I mean, frankly, because it's G2 Esports, I'm always like, ah!
We're never going to get to safe bet with G2 Esports. It's never going to be okay.
But I will say this, in the current meta that we seem to see trending, there's good news and there's bad news. Good news, the bot lane doesn't seem to be that impactful, so Perks and Mickey, who have been recently struggling, might be okay.
Yeah.
The bad news is that Jankos hasn't really showcased with the farming junglers like the Lilias and things like that. And it's not that Jankos can't play them. I think I'll quote Grabs here that G2 cannot do well if Jankos is playing those champions. So that is very concerning. And also that's also the assumption that the play-ins meta will extend into groups, which we could have a complete shakeup because it's just a different caliber of opponent. But I'm not, scared for Wonder or Caps, where solo laners tend to be dominating. So that's also good news for G2. I think what I've seen a lot of people predicting on this group is Suning, G2, TL, Machi. And I think, that's an assumption because people haven't seen Machi. I've watched, I think, 4 of their VODs so far. I definitely do prep them harder going into it. I was going to see like what my assignments were and then kind of over-index if I needed to.
Yeah, to be honest, guys, we can't be perfect analysts for every team. So we do strategically pick and choose. If I don't cast a single Machi game, I will not know shit about Machi. That's just what it is. No offense to you, Machi. Just can't prep everybody.
But the thing is like TL look in really good form. Their individuals are popping off. Broxo looks really comfortable on the Graves. I know that in playoffs he had champion pool issues. I still think those carried over into play-ins, but he wasn't punished really hard. And I think it's hard to punish him because there's too many good things to try to take away from TL right now. But as an EU fan, like let's set aside the LPL team in Suning right now. Let's set aside Machi. This is G2 versus TL. Like, I don't care.
I mean, yeah, that's it, right? We're getting the run back. This is MSI finals all over again, but they're, they've beefed up now. We got Broxa in the jungle. They're ready to go. And this is the matchup I'm actually least concerned about.
Really?
Yeah, actually, honestly.
Did you see Jensen?
No, Jensen is but you've seen Caps. Like, you pointed out the weak points, but you didn't say Caps, and you didn't say Caps.
Have you seen Core JJ in Tactical?
I have, and that does worry me. And now while I have faith for... It's like, I love the pieces of G2's bot lane individually, but together it's not clicking the way it needs to click, is I guess how I say it. But let's run lane by lane. In the past, Wonder has kicked the living shit out of Impact. And admittedly, Impact is looking good, but I have faith in Wonder. Jankos versus Broxa. The reports are Broxa's limited champion pool. His Lilia wasn't great. We've obviously seen the Graves be pretty consistent for him. We're going to see how that one plays out, because Broxa, I do not think, is the jungler to super punish Jankos if Jankos has to play like Set or whatever, right? Mid lane, ain't nobody taking Caps down. Ain't nobody taking Caps down. Like, no matter what happens to G2, Caps will play well. Like, you saw Humanoid, who's like, what, our second, third, fourth best mid laner? And that man was taking names.
You started like really pulling.
Well, I forgot about Larson. I'm not going to lie for a second. And I was like, well, Nemesis was also not playing that well. I'm making the tier list in my head as I'm speaking. You got to bear with me. Regardless, Humanoid showed up. Caps is going to show. I have faith in the EU mids. Now, bot lane is an issue, but I look at our top side and I go, optimism is there for G2. So I think G2 have it. Now, if you want to tell me that G2, that like Mad Lions is omen of doom to come, it's not supposed fiddlesticksing omen of doom to come, I can kind of believe that. I don't know if Mac was being completely fair with us when he's saying that, like, oh, we just totally collapsed. It doesn't mean anything. I think it might mean something. Maybe I'm too quick to be scared, but I think it might mean something. But unless we totally collapse, I have absolute faith in G2 to take TL.
I have absolute faith in G2 in a best of 5. I don't have absolute faith in G2 in best of 1.
That's true. That's true. That's a fair point, Frosco.
I think G2's ability to adapt and learn is one of their greatest strengths because of their versatility and flexibility. I'm a little bit worried for Group A because I think Suning and TL, that is not the gap between G2 that you really want it to be when G2 have been gapping on everyone else, if you know what I'm saying.
Yep.
If you guys are unfamiliar with Suning, the last lion remaining in the world's competition, this is SOFM's team. And if you haven't heard the name SOFM, just fiddlesticks and prepare yourself. Just let that sweet word, that acronym come into your ears.
You guys remember what Levi did to our region? What Levi did to so many regions? SOFM did that to Levi. Like, let's be clear here.
He's the OG Levi.
He's the OG Levi.
Okay, he is so mechanically gifted. He is so mechanically gifted. Sometimes an utter moron. Just loses his goddamn mind.
We're building him. He is the boogeyman. He will tear you apart. He is Baba Yaga. He is John Wick. He is here to mess you up. He might shoot himself in the foot.
Listen.
But he's also John Wick, but he might shoot himself.
He's like when Luke Skywalker looks down the barrel of the lightsaber when he first picks it up.
And as long as he doesn't push that button, we're all screwed. But he might push the button, then he's just dead. So, who knows?
Yeah, so I'm really unsure about Suning. Suning will either absolutely just clown on kids, or it's the LGD, but just much faster paced.
AKA the LPL conundrum. What version, what level, what will we see? It's hard to say. I'm taking G2 Esports over Team Liquid, and I will say EU that not just because G2 are who they are, but I think this one is I think Group A is not as easy as we initially assumed it would be when we saw the first 3 teams drawn.
I actually think Group A is actually the hardest group to predict, in my opinion, of who gets out. I
think that's fair.
It really depends on what form. I don't know if it's, TL G2 getting out. I don't know if it's G2 and Suning, TL and Suning. And maybe my bias comes in because I'm just scared about G2 and best of ones because I'm this team can either clown on people or just fiddlesticks and run it down. Whereas I think actually TL, I'm pretty confident that they'll make it out. I think that's the one thing that I'll say about Group A. I think TL makes it out of the group. I don't know if it's Suning or G2 or fiddlesticks it, Machi, who's holding hands with them getting out of that group.
To me, this one's completely up in the air. And part of that's because, once again, not as prepared for Machi as I need to be. So they're just a question mark to me. I might think that they're really great. I might think that they're at the bottom of the group. But from the 3 teams remaining, I have no idea. That's what I will say. So we're just going to have to see EU fans. I'm really surprised you have that much faith in Team Liquid. But to be fair, if you did not watch plans, Team Liquid, as mentioned earlier by Frost, just to reiterate, we're the only team that looked like a major region team punching down against weaker competition.
And it's how they win. It's their setup, guys. The Rift Herald setup is really good. They are
a clean team.
They're doing it better than other teams around them by a significant margin, as well as also individually performing when they need to. That's why I have a lot of faith in TL, because I feel like they're super consistent.
Yes. And if that sucks to hear, it sucks to say. Don't worry. I'm just kidding. I have no beef with NA anymore. I'm kind of over it. We punched down for the entire year. We'll see if we get to do it again next year. Good luck, NA. Anyway, Group B, next up, Damwon Gaming, JD Gaming, PSG Talon, and Rogue.
This group's a banger.
This group is an absolute banger, but let's be honest. Everyone knows it. We're going to say it here. This is Damwon Gaming and JD Gaming. Rogue, this is the miracle shot. I said it when we saw the first 2 teams drawn. Despite the fact that I think they're going to roll over PSG Talent, I still think this is the miracle.
Hilariously, I'm the least worried about Rogue. Yeah.
You just love consistency, and I get it. It's Worlds. Consistency and best of one is everything.
Because I've just been watching these round robins best of ones. I'm I hate all these teams. I hate it. And then as soon as it gets to a best of 5, I'd completely pump the brakes and be well, here's the problem now. But right now, I look at Rogue and I'm this is so unfortunate that you're in Group B. I'm so upset about it. But also at the same time, in a best of 1, you could really mess someone up. Maybe Rogue completely destroys one of the tournament favorites. Because for me, Damwon and JD Gaming are my tournament favorites. You got both of them.
Yeah. Damwon are so scary. Damwon are so scary. Damwon and JD are both so scary.
But I think Damwon looks significantly more scary in their playoffs run, particularly their finals, than they did in the ramp up. So how I do prep for teams is I will watch I'll take the top 3 teams of the region, and I will watch the team that I'm studying against the other top 3 teams over the entire course, and then their playoff run. And so that way I can try to figure out what their like trajectory was. So you can say things like, this team started out doing this, and then they fixed this, and in playoffs you really saw it come together, or in playoffs it really hit it because of the meta shit. Like, you can say stuff like that. And for Damwon, what really impressed me was how much more patient their team fighting got. And I'm used to watching a lot of LPL and LEC, and it's very like fast, like snap grab. But Damwon, they wait for the perfect setup. They're still like a good fast-paced team. I'm not saying they're super slow, but like Nuguri will be playing his Kennen, and he'll have so many opportunities for the perfect Kennen ultimate, and he'll never just like snap pull the trigger. It's always like a really beautiful, orchestrated, like gorgeous destruction. And I'm like, this is so cool to watch them attack from so many different angles, to wait for the perfect moment. The patience in their setup is super clean.
All right, so you're the least worried about Rogue, but in terms of
not get out of the
performing,
group.
yeah, okay, you're the least worried about them performing. Like, we will actually see Rogue perform at the level we saw them perform domestically. It just might not be enough because JD Gaming and Damwon Gaming are so good. I want to speed to these last two, not because I don't love Fnatic, but let's hit on these big ones as well, because sadly for Group B it feels pretty locked. Group C is the one that feels wide open. It feels big, wide open to me. It is Fnatic, Gen.G, LGD, and TSM again. Now, you're saying that Team Liquid is like who we have to be scared of. I'm actually worried about TSM when it comes to Fnatic. Now, bear with me here. It's almost exclusively because of mid lane matchup. Because we talked about, you're looking at me like I'm crazy. Bjergsen literally dragged this team through the entirety of LCS. And Nemesis, as much as things are looking a little bit better, I feel like is exploitable. You're looking at me like I'm crazy. If you tell me I'm crazy, that's the news that I want to hear, Frosker. And so please, for the love of God, tell me I'm crazy. Like, am I just totally wrong on this gut check here? You look both upset and confused. If you're not in YouTube land, you're like, how can you be so wrong and so stupid?
Well, let's think about the meta. Who are the most important players in the meta?
Junglers.
Okay.
And then always mid laners. Top laners, obviously.
Who's sending the best jungler from Europe?
It's got to be Fnatic.
Okay.
In the current meta, don't lose it, Yankos fans. In the current meta.
Okay. We're also going into a lot of team fights, a lot of flipping over heralds and dragon fights. Who's the most important member in those?
And Herald fight? I mean, support's pretty good in those.
Or?
I mean, our top lane is also
Come on,
good.
we're team fighting.
We're team fighting. I mean, what? You mean early Herald fights? You mean late Herald fights?
Man, fiddlesticks you. It's reckless.
I
It's
know.
reckless.
That's what you mean. It feels like it's not a quiz.
I'm not concerned for Fnatic. I think that they're fine. I would be shocked if Fnatic didn't make it out of this group. Now, I'm not saying that Fnatic like stomp through and get first because it's best of one, but I don't think that there's a chance that Fnatic don't make it out of the group. Now, I have a lot of questions around TSM. I find them very interesting in that, like, for me, TL's form was much better than what we saw in plans. And people will say, oh yeah, obviously caliber of competition that they were against versus domestically in the LCS. But it was how they were winning or how they lost, which is what I was really watching for, like completely eliminating the caliber of competition. I think that we saw a much better TL than we had seen, at least in the LCS VODs, so the back half of their season than I had watched.
Yeah.
And for TSM, like the Team Liquid that I just saw, I'm like, they could theoretically be.
Like, if we run back NA playoffs, that TL wins the split, I think.
Yeah, like they were really good. And maybe I'm just being like sideswiped by the caliber of competition. And like maybe if they're not, punching a Rome in the face with Mordekaiser, like they're not able to do that to BB up into the top lane. But at the same time, I'm like, I don't know. I think that TL will get there's a chance that TL might be the strongest LCS team.
Yeah, I actually, right now, let's just call it a bold prediction. TL are the strongest LCS team.
How much TSM and FlyQuest have you watched?
Enough. I watched playoffs. Now, I didn't watch a lot of regular season. I mostly just watched playoffs, and I am not a fan. I watched Spica on Set versus Graves get like 3 objectives completely uncontested and be even with Santorin in CS. And while there were definitely redeeming characteristics of the way that TSM were playing, I am not hot on FlyQuest right now.
I will say that really good things for TSM fans. Bjergsen's wave management, super solid. He probably has the best wave management of any mid laner in the LCS, and it's why he punishes really hard. His champion pool, really big. You already kind of said it that he like dragged people across the finish line. But then I'm like, you know, the experience factor might come up for them, but TSM also have some new faces to the world stage. Obviously, you have like your Cement and your Bjergsen and your Double Lift, and some of them also have shown up at world stage, but it's not the same thing as having like a world champion as your support and core JJ, or a world champion and your top lane is Impact.
World finalist in Brock, so that roster is actually so stacked.
Yeah, it's... Whew.
Jensen's been to world so consistently. Oh, man, it's actually crazy. This is what I'll say. My predictions for this group, I'll do my we'll do formal pick'ems later via the website or whatever, whenever those unlock. But like my formal predictions for this group is I think that Fnatic and Gen G do get out. But this is the group that I am least confident. You don't believe in Gen G?
The thing is top side of map seems really important, and I think Rascal is not the strongest top laner.
Rascal's quite weak, at least amongst the LCK top laners. I think.
Clid flips a lot. Like, Clid can have those games where he's absolutely just stomping on people, but he can also have those games where it just goes very, very sideways. I think Gen G, because bot lane doesn't seem to be as much of a carry, although we are going to 5v5s. So, like, if Ruler actually gets to show up, like, Gen G are great. When Ruler gets ahead, Gen G look like a completely different beast, and being able to facilitate him. If we're in, like, a bunch of Ashe, Senna, Ezreal handshakes, not saying that he can't play those champions, but just that I don't really know what the group's meta is going to be, and power is taken away from bot lane, then unfortunately I'm really scared for Gen G, because I really want to see Ruler, who in my opinion is possibly either the best or at least number 2 AD carry at the tournament, perform. I love watching AD carries perform, and I don't want it to be about topside map.
That's a good point, because I really love Life and I really love Ruler, and their duo together just looks so, like, when they get going, you're right. But that is a good point that Rascal, I mean, especially in the series versus DRX, did not really have his stuff together. And Clid is definitely a flipper. BDD has his BDD moments, certainly lives up to his name sometimes, but you're right. I think I'm loving the bot side a little bit too much in the context of a meta where bot side has been, I don't want to say irrelevant, but definitely not number 1 priority in this meta. So room for doubt there. I still feel like Gen G can make it, but maybe that's... And I'm not predicting on LGD ever again, by the way. You're like, why? But what about
There's
LGD?
Only 3 teams
they
in this
double
group.
3-0'd. Never again. 2015, they burned me. They kind of burned me here by like...
Watch LGD absolutely slam Fnatic and deny Fnatic the chance of getting out of groups just to be like, this is for 2015.
Oh my God. What else can they do to hurt me? How many times do I have to think that this team is going to do something and then they fail? And then when I think they're not going to do something, they do something. It's just like, it's like they live to spite people.
They'll get the shockwave. Oh my God. Fnatic and TSM are in this group. LGD can get their revenge. I actually have to change my prediction. LG are getting out of this group.
Oh
they're
my God, the 2015 revenge?
They're like,
oh no.
Suckers!
All right. Okay. That's that group. You kind of restored my faith in Fnatic, which feels nice, because I do want to believe.
Fnatic are a really good team, and the meta suits them.
I think Mad Lions falling apart kind of has shaken me, and I always feel this way until I see a team actually play on stage. But I feel like I'm such a pessimist. I'm always convinced it's going to fall apart. Like I'm the scared fan. I am the scared fan that's like, we're never as good as we think we are. We're never as good as and we're always better than I think we're going to be. So I just got to take it with a grain of salt.
Sometimes you just got to believe. My concern is it's going to be the champion support pool for Fnatic.
Yeah, that's fair. What can you actually get? How can you get agency? And God forbid we ever go back to Enchanter supports. Please no. Get Hylissang on that stuff that can roam. But Fnatic know that better than anyone. Last group. We don't have a seed here, but because we love the Unicorns of Love, and they used to play for the EU LCS, we'll give them some love too. But it is DRX, FlyQuest, Top Esports, and the Unicorns of Love. So Top Esports making it out, most likely, short of total collapse. I think we can say it's one safe bet. But who's number 2? You doing DRX? You going your boy Deft? Huh? Deft gonna make it out?
Oh, he's got that really beautiful story of that. What his support was like, I will get the world championship cup
I
for you.
will get that cup for you. He kind of laughed it off, to be fair. But yeah, if you haven't checked it out, Ashley Kang over at Horizon Esports has done a number of fantastic Deft interviews. So if you are a legacy esports fan and you love Deft, check him out. If you are a new fan, you want to know about Deft, also really great opportunity to do so. That said, yeah, it's just DRX is the safe bet, but I can't. It's so hard for me to say with confidence. Like, I think FlyQuest is out. I've told you already. I'm not a fan. I saw those playoffs. Did not love FlyQuest. But DRX, do they make it through? Does Unicorns of Love like upset this whole thing? Because obviously the safe bet is Top Esports followed by DRX. Boom,
I will
boom.
say this. So I prepped really extensively because I had to do the prep document for UOL. So it wasn't just like my prep document, but it was prep document that other people were going to be reading. And I was like, I will make this as easy as possible. And I had some conversations with Sheepy, and Sheepy was talking about how his individual players are Grandmaster and Challenger on the Chinese Super Server and individual talent-wise. And I think they really showcased that today when they 3-0'd Supermassive with compositions that frankly should not have been able to do what they were doing, that they are very mechanically gifted. They are very good individual players. So I think usually when people look at play-ins teams, you're like, they won't be able to press their buttons as well as the other people. Like, this is going to be easy. Doesn't matter how big brain you are. Unicorns of Love, I think, can press the buttons just as well. Unfortunately, they're also in a group with Knight. Oh, sorry, guys. Hopefully No Man's actually just... I would love to see No Man's solo kill Knight.
That would be one that would blow up the internet. That would be insane. That would be so cool. But on the other hand, I'm so worried that Knight is going to make No Man's look like what Bolulu looked like versus No Man's. And that's it's a complete set. He's going to beat him in. He's going to make him look awful. He's going to just smash him in every lane matchup, no matter what the matchup is. That's for context. For anyone who didn't watch the games today. It was bad. It was bad for our boy Bolulu from the TCL. And yeah, I'm worried.
I don't think Unicorns will get out of this group, but I do think that they will decide the group.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I think there's also room for FlyQuest to throw a spanner in the works a little bit, but I just don't see how they get out themselves. DRX, probably safe. If you are a DRX fan, please explain to me why you think Pioshik is good. I don't understand it. We can talk more about that.
Ashley was talking about how his champion pool feels really good right meow.
Yeah, I just don't think... And his laners have to play for him, and even if they do, he just power farms.
Yeah, but he has Chovy.
Chovy, absolutely I love. I love Chovy. I love
Showmaker.
Deft. I love Kyria. Yeah, Showmaker.
I thought we were just listing all of the mid
No, I was just listing all the players on his team. It's actually mostly Pioshik that I do not have faith in. But admittedly, in the context of this group, he'll probably do fine. But Pioshik, to me, I don't like it. The only games I saw him do good on, he like stumbled into early kills
Don't we
or
get to cast
50-50
them?
jungle pathing. We might.
We get to cast group D, I believe.
We'll announce it. I don't remember at this exact moment, so I won't pretend that I do.
Producer's laughing at me, but I can't tell if it's angry laughing or...
It's just like, what are you doing? Why are you bringing this up? Okay, let's run through them all. Wait, okay, so who are your favorites to get out?
I told you, top esports and top esports.
Okay, and whoever else is just like the body that was
Frankly,
less
I don't really
marred.
care about Group D outside of top esports.
That's fair. All right, so let's recap for our EU fans. If you are watching at home, I'm a little bit shakier, but Frosk, I'm going to use your prediction. G2 Esport, that's the 50-50.
I think
it could go either way.
I would say Group A, my actual prediction is Team Liquid get out of this group. I don't know who else is walking out with them. I'll say G2. I hope it's G2, but I think Team Liquid get out of this group.
Yikes. Rogue, doomed.
Yeah.
Sorry, Rogue. I've said this on Twitter before. You took a bullet to save the rest of the European teams for it. If you rise above this challenge, that will be the coolest storyline of all time. If you knock out Damwon Gaming or JD Gaming, you are legends. Even if you get immediately 3-0'd in a quarterfinal, I do not care. You are a legend. So that is my challenge to you. The further you go, obviously, the better.
I just actually have to give some analysis to Rogue not making it out. And so I'm going to say 3 words, Nuguri, Zoom, and Hanabi. Take that from that what you will.
A little harsh, but yes. I don't know if Hanabi deserves to be on that list, but damn, okay, that's a condemnation of ability, I'll safely say. Woo, wow, I'm reeling from that one. Okay, last and...
That might be the meanest thing I've ever
last
said.
and certainly not least, and maybe certainly our best hope, it is none other than Fnatic. Fnatic, is this I think they're making it through.
I think Fnatic get out of this group.
Fnatic get out of this group.
Yeah.
Nice. Fnatic fans, you guys, you've had a hard time. You beat G2 in a best of 5, but you haven't been able to win a split in a long time. So take this.
Here's the thing.
Here's your
Group
point
A,
of solace.
Team Liquid's getting out. Group B, Damwon and JDG. Group C, Fnatic. And Group D, TES.
Yeah. And if you're wondering what names are missing, it's because it's so impossibly hard to predict. And we're going to have to see. Week 1 versus Week 2 is always a big change. Week 1 coming in is a big change, so we're going to have to find out. But Fnatic fans, take solace. We have the most faith in your team at this moment to make it out of groups, which may inadvertently be a caster curse, so apologies in advance. But hopefully...
Ooh, I didn't think about
you
that
can take
one.
it as a
Fnatic
positive.
are not getting out of the group. I go,
Second, we're confident in them. They can't do it.
TSM getting out of this group.
Oh. Yikes. Anyway, EU fans, that's going to do it here for us on the first Worlds episode of EUphoria. For context, we're going to be back after kind of each stage. They'll be placed kind of intermittently throughout the entire tournament. Again,
sporadically, some might say.
but they're not really split. It's just intermittently. It's just kind of, they make sense. It's not just like completely random. Anyway, this is going to be episode 1 of EUphoria Worlds. Is this season 7? This is episode 1 of EUphoria Worlds. We'll be back for episode 2 after week 1 of groups concludes. We're going to find out how right we were, how wrong we were, and everything in between. Once again, goodbye to Mad Lions, Rogue, Fnatic, G2. You guys are up next. All the best to you. Cannot wait to see what you do on stage. Go out there and make all the EU fans proud. And wherever you're listening, thank you so much. And we will see you next week, basically.
Hashtag go rogue.
Yeah, hashtag G2 win. Hashtag Fnatic win. FNC.